Kayley, did you know that the United States Army is setting aside about $26 million in fiscal years 2025 and 2026 to launch the Next Generation Commercial Operations in Defended Enclaves program?
I did not. However, I do believe that any investment in helping small businesses with CMMC compliance is a good thing.
All right, so here's what's happening. The Army is announcing a certification program, essentially a standardized program, the Cybersecurity Maturity Model CERT program, where essentially a defense contractor, a private defense contractor, can say, I'm certified and here's why. And they'll qualify for certain, the ability to bid on certain projects. And so it's a way of getting a baseline in place. But like any certification program, private, public sector, whatever, it takes a lot of resources to get there. And that's in tension with the U.S. Army and the federal government's general view that they want to give small businesses a chance. And so if you make the controls too tight or too expensive, then nobody can comply with them. And so that's the problem I think they found themselves with.
I appreciate that they've launched this program to help make this happen, because it really shows their commitment to not only security, but also growing those small businesses, not putting an undue expectation on them.
There's really two parts to this planning. The first is the enclave itself. So the enclave itself is like a pilot program. They're creating a externally cyber secure environment where small businesses who are picked to kind of play around in it can do their app development, code development, store their plans, including classified information, all inside this safe and secure working area. That, I think, has a lot of promise because it doesn't require the small businesses to do anything except use a particular place to do their work. The second is a little more indirect. So the second is continued investment in their mentoring program. So there you've got large defense contractors, medium-sized defense contractors who sign up formally to mentor smaller businesses and small businesses to kind of help those smaller businesses with a variety of compliance, including cybersecurity compliance. So a little more indirect there on that end.
Yeah, I mean, these things can be so complex. And that extra boost on the back end, like they're not just putting the money in to create this new program, all these new acronyms, just to say they've done it. They are putting in the work to make this a sustainable effort that continues. It's not a one and done type thing.
Yeah, and I think the financial investment on the mentor protege side is to sort of help the companies that are serving as mentors recover some of their costs. But they're, according to the DoD, this is the largest, or at least the longest running federal government mentor protege program. It's the idea that it kind of personifies the business, right? It's the idea that like a large business is like an older sister or an older brother giving help to the small businesses. But I don't know how, I haven't observed this in practice, but it's certainly worth a shot if you're a small business and you want to, when those certification requirements come online in certain contracts next year in 2025, this may be an avenue to at least get some help that you don't have to pay for to see if, maybe you're further along in the maturity model than you thought you were, but it gives you someone to talk to and at least answer questions.
Yeah. I think that the U.S. government has done a lot over the years to support small businesses in general. And I think that any step that we're making towards a more cyber secure nation is ultimately always a very good thing, and maybe a little too late, but hopefully not truly too late.
Well, I mean, look, small businesses are in the defense industry are a national security interest because if you only have three giant federal government contractors who are capable of serving these contracts, then you're stuck with three of them. What if there's a problem at one of them or two of them, or one goes out of business, right? By having at least some encouragement of a variety of different companies, you get innovation and you get, diversity, like you do in your portfolio. If one fails, then there's going to be someone else there to take the place. So there's some hope there. Well, I'm your host, Jack Clabby. I'm a cybersecurity attorney at Carlton Fields, PA. With me, as always, is Kayley Melton. Kayley is a cybersecurity mercenary, also known as the Bob Ross of InfoSec. Today, we're going to chat with Zabrina Mcintyre. That's Zabrina with a Z. Zabrina is the Director and Cybersecurity Advisor at KPMG. Zabrina brings a unique blend of creativity and expertise to her work. She has a specialized master's degree in art business, and her career experience includes time at three major animation studios and the Smithsonian Institute in Washington, D.C. She's also a founding member and a past president of the Western Washington affiliate of WESIS, where she continues championing women's voices in cybersecurity. We have a great show planned for today. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with Zabrina.
Welcome to No Password Required, a monthly conversation that introduces you to some of the top talent in the world of cybersecurity.
And welcome back. Our guest is Zabrina Mcintyre. Zabrina, welcome to No Password Required.
Thank you. I'm very excited to be here and getting to speak with you all today.
So, Zabrina, I want to start with your current role, and then we're going to back up and find a little bit more about your career path. But can you tell us about your current role as a director at KPMG and kind of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So at KPMG, I get to work with Fortune 500 clients and help them understand their cybersecurity maturity against established frameworks and regulations, such as like PCI, to ensure that they're meeting their compliance goals and obligations.
So is it like an assurance role where you're taking a standard and you're sort of testing against a standard?
Yeah, that's a lot of the times. And so depending on the needs of the client and their unique environment, making sure that I and the team that I'm leading, that we go in, that we're really understanding not only what the goals are, but also what the client's kind of current state is, to make sure that we're making the best recommendations to help them meet not only their business need goals, but then also any compliance obligations there.
And like, where does it fall on the sort of technical spectrum? Are you getting highly technical, or are you staying at a governance level? Kind of where do you fall on that spectrum?
So it can be a little bit of both, depending on kind of what the needs are. I have some very technical, incredibly gifted people on my team. I stay a little bit more high level personally with those regulations. And that's part of the fun of the coworkers that I get to work with. They're so smart depending on what the needs of the particular client engagement get to be.
Zabrina, how much of what you're doing today is remote versus on-prem? And how has that changed over your career?
So with my particular role, it's a lot of remote. So I'm actually talking to you from my home office. So purple is my favorite color. And if I'm getting to work remote, I like to have a happy space. And then I will go on site to clients kind of as their needs require it. So sometimes there's more in-depth environments that you want to take that look at, or more sensitive conversations that just are really nice to be able to connect in person. And that's when I do get to fly kind of all over the country, depending on where the client is based, to get to connect with them.
You also get to see if, they have physical security, but then they have a back door that just opens onto a child's playground or prison or something too,
Oh, I'm always evaluating that. Even when I'm just going someplace for fun, you just have that habit of what is this security? And whenever I'm using my credit card, I'm kind of giving it a little little test there, make sure there's no skimmer. It's just something you do now.
Say off-brand gas stations, right?
Oh, goodness. Yeah.
There's all right. So you mentioned the color, a color purple that you like, and I know you have a history in art. Can you tell us a little bit about your career path? Because I know you spent some time at art school and animation studios. Can you just kind of walk us through your career path and how you got to where you are?
Yeah, absolutely. So I really do love talking about my career and kind of the pivots along the way. So my undergraduate degree is in art history. So that's what I went to school for. And when I graduated, I was a good art history major and went to work for a museum. So I worked for the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. for 4 years.
Wow. That's really cool.
And then I pivoted, still trying to stay in the art world, but was intrigued by animation. So after I earned my master's degree kind of in business, it was a specialized program, I pivoted into the animation industry and worked in that industry for a few years for companies like Disney and Warner Brothers, and was able to still have art, but in that more kind of commercial space.
Now, was computers always a part of this, or at some point did you pivot to doing the animation? Did you have to learn how computers worked, or did you kind of always know how they worked?
Oh, I had to learn. So I love learning and that continuous learning. So when I was at the point in my career that I was looking for something different, and I had kind of criteria of what I was looking for that would be engaging, still be able to help people learn, higher earning potential than what I was encountering before in my career. And I found my way to cybersecurity, and it just intrigued me and checked all those boxes, but I had to learn a lot of things very quickly.
I lived in D.C. for a while at the outset of my career. And one of the nice things about the Smithsonian was that it was free. And I just, it is, if you live in D.C. for a while and then you move to another city and suddenly someone's charging you $40 to get in to see art, you're like, wait a minute, what is this? Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. The Smithsonian was a true gift to our nation. And being able to offer that whole collection for free is just something that's amazing to be able to have for our citizens and the community and anyone who wanted to go.
And so how did it, how did you connect then with the consulting work that you're doing now from where you were?
Yeah, so that's fun. When I really think about my career, it's a lot of coordination and bringing together the right teams with the right skills to accomplish whatever the goal may be. So my work at the Smithsonian was in cultural and educational planning. So being able to pull together teams, distinguished speakers to be able to host those types of programs. And then even in the animation world, I had a producer role. So working with our artists, our writers, our editors to bring their unique skills and talents together to be able to produce an animated television show on time and on budget so that it could air. So then when I pivoted into the consulting world, if I think about it in that very high level sense, it's pulling together my, technical, very skilled consulting teams to make sure that we have the right team assembled to meet whatever the client's needs are. And then, of course, with that on time and on budget mindset to be able to accomplish those cybersecurity goals.
Have you ever finished a consulting gig and thought wow, I wish I could run that back, do that again? It was so great that you're like, let's do it again.
It's so great. I'm like, there's always lessons learned for sure. But what's really fun is getting to work with some really amazing clients that when the engagement ends, it's a little bit like, oh, I didn't want it to end. I want to be able to still work with that team and just enjoy it's a privilege to be immersed in our client's environment whenever we are. And so sometimes when you have such a great experience, it can be hard to leave and go on to the next client.
So you mentioned PCI as an example standard. I mean, that is a very challenging standard. And a lot of companies, I think, put their toe into it, but don't quite understand maybe the commitment they've made by accepting credit cards for payment systems. Given the pivots you've had in your career, how did you get comfortable with PCI DSS or similar standards? Like, what's your process for learning these things as you move from engagement to engagement?
Yeah, absolutely. So being able to just read anything and everything that's available, learning from coworkers and those who have lived it before us. I am currently working on earning my QSA to be a qualified security assessor within that framework. So I am on that path. So there's still more learning ahead of me, but I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. It's whatever the 400-page standard might be. I can't even only imagine what the books that help you learn the standard are. Are they like 1,000 pages long, or is it all? It's probably all digital.
Oh well, and I have a handy little guide. Actually, I just attended the PCI conference, so I have a little like this. This is pretty useful. So I do have those kind of quick references within arm's reach.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, it is. Of all the different things that I'm a cybersecurity attorney, and that's the one area where whenever PCI DSS gets mentioned, where we know we need to call in the outside help because it is so challenging, and it really does require a lot of attention to look for areas where you're fitting or you're not fitting from a standard like that.
Yeah, and it evolves like all good standards and frameworks. They're evolving to keep up with the new technology, risks, challenges. But then businesses have the challenge of keeping up as well.
How has the kind of 3 phases of your career, and there's probably more, but just if you think about going from the museum work to the animation work and then to the consulting work, how has this shaped the advice that you give others who might approach you about a career in cybersecurity?
So I really embrace the being open to new opportunities because you just never know where life and your career path is going to take you. So with my career pivots, I've also been able to live in different locations and work for different companies. So there's that aspect of being open to new opportunities. And then at the same time, you have to be your own best advocate. These pivots didn't just happen. They were with intention and a lot of work and networking and learning on my part in order to make them happen. So it's be your own best advocate for what you want and then being open to possibilities that maybe you didn't even think that you wanted.
How do you, when you're presented with a variety of opportunities and you have an idea of what you would like to see happen, how do you determine which opportunities to pursue?
Oh, that's a good question. And that's also a fun one, right? Like I hope we can be blessed with multiple good opportunities, right? That's a beautiful problem to have. And that really comes down. So I have this concept that I like to talk about of like your own personal board of directors. So who are those trusted people that you go to talk things through, to get perspectives, and then taking that information and still ultimately deciding what feels right for you, not only for whatever is going on right at that moment, but where you want to go. I'm very goal oriented. So I'm always thinking, what am I doing now that's fulfilling, but also what do I want to be doing a year from now or 5 years from now? And also if you use that framework for different opportunities, you can kind of understand, is this fun for now, or is this going to also potentially pay off for where I want to be in 5 years also?
Yeah. So I know that you are a founder of your local affiliate's Women in Cybersecurity chapter. Can you tell us a little bit about Women in Cybersecurity and what it means to you to be a founder of that local affiliation?
Yeah, absolutely. So Women in Cybersecurity is one of those global nonprofits that I think is just doing such great work. And they have so many resources available, and they are global and national in their resources. So then where the affiliate program is being able to build community and bring some of those resources at that local level. And it's almost 5 years ago now, I was looking for more of my own local community in the greater Seattle area. And I wasn't really finding it. It wasn't there, especially if I wanted to connect with other professional and technology focused women. So I and four other ladies were like, let's just go for it and start this thing, and just kind of doing the best we can from there.
So I've heard before that the best way to enact change is to focus on local things, local matters, local changes. Can you talk to us a little bit about the impact you've seen from women in cybersecurity while you've been in the organization, especially locally?
Absolutely. It's been so interesting over the last 5 years, just how the local community has grown and expanded, and with other organizations kind of also popping up and just more people being involved. And one of those kind of sayings that I hope we've all heard is, if you can see it, you can be it. So just being more visible helps others, especially women, also feel that they have that community and can go forth and be visible too.
What type of impact do you hope to see in the future?
So I have particularly focused on wanting to see more women on stage at industry events. And that's something that I have taken steps to be able to encourage or be a champion for a woman who's very accomplished in her field, but might not know about the kind of RFP process, or it's hard to advocate for yourself of like, yes, I can be a keynote speaker, but if somebody else nominates them, then it becomes that much easier. So that's something that I have done some work around and would like to continue to do to increase women's presence at professional conferences on stage specifically.
I love that you want to see that happen, and so you're actively taking your own steps to help that happen. It's really inspiring.
Yeah, it's been fun to see to be able to make a difference in that regard of some of the organizers. They're like, yes, we want that. So.
That's awesome. So we've been talking a little bit about how you're kind of in both worlds, the art world and cybersecurity. It's very right brain versus left brain type of thing. Which, in your opinion, is easier for you to define, art or cybersecurity?
That's a hard one, because I do appreciate both of those worlds, and they are very left brain, right brain. So I guess I feel like I am comfortable in both, but neither is easier or harder to define.
Yeah, I might be a teeny bit biased, but I think that we need more creative people in the cybersecurity world. So I'm happy to see that there are more of us. What do you call it? Artists in disguise in this industry.
Well, the creativity is just being able to look at a problem or a challenge and just come up with new, unique solutions. So absolutely, we still need that for innovation.
Yeah.
Zabrina, if you were mentoring someone who had kind of similar diverse passions, and they asked you, okay, Zabrina, of all the things you've done, art, cybersecurity, animation, which has brought you the most fulfillment? Kind of how would you respond?
I think the most fulfillment is a tough question because I also still have a lot of career ahead of me that I also hope to bring fulfillment. And so being able to appreciate and be grateful for where I am at any given time is something that I try to remind myself, especially when it's hard. Or some things didn't go the way that I maybe wanted them to, but am I enjoying working with the team that I'm working with at the moment? Or am I learning something? Am I helping a client or my team? And that brings me fulfillment. So
sometimes we talk about the 1-minute career test, which is if you look around your organization, is there somebody who's 5 years, 10 years, 15 years out from where you are, who's doing what you want to do, right? I think about that a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And those can even be a type of mentor that you don't even necessarily need their conversation, but just kind of looking at what somebody who is 5 or 10 years ahead of you, what they have done and what they are actively doing. And that can also help somebody plot their career next steps also.
All right, we'll take a short break now, but when we return, we'll have Zabrina take our lifestyle polygraph. So stay with us.
You're listening to the No Password Required podcast. We cover cybersecurity and a lot of other stuff.
Welcome back. As many of you know, the lifestyle polygraph is a test used by the federal government to determine if a person is worthy of learning some of our nation's most important secrets. Here, though, we use this technique for slightly lower stakes, to determine whether our guests can join our fantasy cybersecurity squad. Zabrina, are you ready for the lifestyle polygraph?
I am so ready. Let's do it.
Awesome. All right. Question 1. You've described Johan Vermeer as your favorite artist. Can you tell us about your appreciation for his work and the challenges connected to seeing all of his known paintings?
Yes. So he's a 17th century Dutch artist who has a very low body of work, up to like 37 paintings, depending on which scholars you listen to. But in particular, one of the paintings is currently missing, and it was part of an epic art heist back in 1990 from the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum in Boston. And so I hope one day, still, I have hope that painting will be recovered and I will be able to see it, because I would like to say that I've seen all of Vermeer's artworks.
What do you think somebody like Johannes Vermeer would have done with access to photography and digital design? Do you think he would have worked in those mediums? Would he have stayed in paints? What his reaction have been?
So that's a fun question, because depending on which kind of scholars you listen to, he did use some painting techniques, like the camera obscura, that evokes photography-like composition. So he probably is one of those artists that would have been fascinated by photography if he didn't become a photographer himself, but definitely using it as a tool.
Cool. Oh, very cool.
I've never thought about that before, but I mean, the realism in his paintings, there is a little bit of a photographic quality to those, very atmospheric and precise.
But they're still compositions, because some of his works, when you really look at it, like the shutters on the window don't line up as they would in real life. They're only there for the aesthetic purpose. So that's what's fun when you're really looking.
That's awesome. Vermeer is one of my favorite classic artists as well. So I already approve, regardless of how you answered that question.
Love it.
All right. Question 2. Rank these Seattle icons in order of importance to you: the Museum of Pop Culture, the Space Needle, Chihuly Garden, and coffee.
Oh, all are fantastic, but coffee's number one for me. I have to start every day with coffee and then a few more cups to get me through the day. So definitely coffee. And then I do have a love and an appreciation for Mopop and Chihuly, and the Space Needle's so iconic for Seattle. So, they're all tied, but definitely coffee's number one.
So, Zabrina, like if you have an elevated coffee taste because of where you've lived and the experiences you've had, can you also enjoy like a cup of coffee from a off-brand gas station, or is it just like you just can't even have that at this point?
Oh, off-brand gas station. So I have multiple ways to make coffee at home, and I'm probably going to offend some of the coffee people, but I also have a Keurig. But I have a traveling Keurig. So if I'm going someplace that I'm driving, I will bring my own coffee setup so that I can start my day knowing what kind of coffee I'm going to have.
Awesome. That's awesome. And then if an artisan drip coffee appears, it appears.
Exactly.
But you at least have like a baseline of knowing there's going to be a baseline quality. Oh, that's great.
Exactly.
I feel like that's a solid Seattle answer for sure.
Well, it's control what you can control for, right?
All right, question 3. If you were given an unlimited budget to create a comprehensive cybersecurity museum, what would your strategy be and what would be your signature exhibit?
So I am a museum nerd, and it's that learning aspect. And so the idea of being able to help more people learn about cybersecurity, about how technology works, love that idea. And the thing with cybersecurity is sometimes it's hard for people to understand the concepts because it is so digital. So any museum would really have to be educational and probably start from hardware, which is something that is tangible that more people can understand. If they have their phone, they have their laptop. So certainly something with that. And then ease them into, so how does your hardware or your pocket computer, that is your cell phone, actually connect to 3G, now 5G, and what that does when you're trying to go on Instagram or something. So I don't know about a signature exhibit, but it would have to be very educational, and it would want to be accessible. I would love to see just more people feel that cybersecurity is accessible and starting at a younger age.
I like that idea. It's like when you go to the Guinness Brewery Tour, they start you out by teaching you not about beer, but about water. Then they introduce barley. It's like the component parts come first. Then you learn about the finished product. And this would be like a way of saying, okay, hardware first, because you can touch it and feel it, get you comfortable with hardware. Then we'll move into other aspects of cybersecurity and design. I like this idea.
Yeah, it's a really cool idea.
It's like every Western museum eventually just becomes people shooting guns at each other. Maybe like we'd have to find a way to make the cybersecurity museum something other than just, like hacking from an 80s television show where it was just lines of code.
Just furiously typing.
Hoodies, you're wearing the hoodies, and
You're given a hoodie when you go into a certain room. You have to go hood up if you're a bad guy, hood down if you're a good guy. I had, on the drive into work today, I had someone behind me because it was kind of cold today in Tampa. Someone was driving with hoodies and sunglasses behind me, and my first unfiltered thought was, that's a hacker behind me. Despite all the effort I make to not be biased, I didn't think carjacking. I didn't think Unabomber. I thought hacker behind me in the car. So,
well, my hypothetical museum would definitely sell hoodies in the gift shop. So,
oh my God, yes, yes, that would be amazing. All right. 4th question. You once had the chance to showcase your Star Wars fandom by dressing up as Princess Leia for a regional Thanksgiving parade. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so that was fun. When I was living in DC, there was a local community parade for Thanksgiving, and one of my friends had recruited me to dress as Princess Leia. So I had like a cinnamon bun hairstyle, wig, and
awesome.
that type of robe. And I walked with stormtroopers. So there's people who dress up as stormtroopers, the 501st, and they do nonprofit charity work.
Cool.
So I was the Princess Leia marching with the stormtroopers, and we were raising money for Toys for Tots. And that was fun. That was fun, but also a very surreal experience to be able to do that.
Are you a costume person in general?
Not really. I like comic conventions, and I appreciate people who have those cosplay skills, and like that is their talent. I appreciate it, but that is not my focus.
Zabrina, are you Star Wars over Star Trek, or is there a third kind of sci-fi universe that you like?
I am Star Wars over Star Trek.
Okay.
I mean, that's a fierce debate, and I hope nobody didn't just like rage shut this off because I said that. But I do really, really embrace all things Star Wars.
It's a life of adventure then. That's what it's just, there's no wrong answer. We're always learning, right? It's just a life of adventure and learning and excitement, I think, is what that says.
Yeah, Star Wars has that can-do attitude. Never tell me the odds.
Yeah. All right, final question. Can you share your thoughts on rain culture and how it differs between London and Seattle?
All right. So I currently live in the Seattle area, and I had lived for over a year in London where I earned my master's degree. So both places, if you think about them, have a lot of rain. That's what people think. Oh, they're raining all the time. Mostly true. And so what's been funny is just how something as universal as rain, weather, is really handled so differently in different regions. So when I moved to London, that culture, you have your umbrella, you have a sturdy umbrella, you have your wellies, which is what they call their rain boots, their galoshes. You have a good pair of wellies to go puddle stomping through. You maybe have a long trench coat, and that's like London rain culture. And then when I moved to Seattle, I thought, all right, I have 4 pairs of rain boots. I'm good. No, it's very different. In Seattle, you're a tourist if you have an umbrella. You don't use an umbrella. You don't use tall rain boots. No, you have a hood on your jacket at all times, and you just put your hood up and just carry on.
Huh.
Very Star Wars. That's very Star Wars to rely on your hood as an expression of your attitude, right? It's on and off.
Yeah. And there's no such thing as bad weather, only bad clothing. So if you have the right clothes, the rain's not going to stop you.
I had a friend in law school who was in the Army before going to law school. And I remember showing up at one point we were going across town, and I showed up on a rainy day with an umbrella. And he looked at me and he goes, "Umbrellas don't work. They don't work." The U.S. Army has looked at this. They do not work. We don't march the Army with the umbrella. So he made me put my umbrella down and just rely on.
He's
like, I don't know why I listened to him. I wasn't in the Army. I was just a friend of mine. But it's a good point. Like, I'm glad to hear that Seattle has looked at the functionality of the umbrella and just said, no, a small umbrella that just gets maybe around your head, unless you go with a big golf style umbrella, maybe that can help you.
But then you're like carrying it and it's dripping all over the place, and where do you put it? And you're going to lose it. So
it's true.
What do you think, Jack? Does Zabrina get to be on our fantasy cybersecurity squad? Yes,
Zabrina, you have passed the lifestyle polygraph, and you do get to be on it. But starting with the first question, I think we had you after that. I think there are going to be some people who are going to raise questions about Star Wars over Star Trek. Worried you're a little too shoot first, not shoot first style, which can sometimes be a problem. But you know what? I think we have a pretty balanced squad as it is. So if you're a little more aggressive, then we're okay with that.
Yeah, I agree.
Zabrina, thank you so much for joining us today. If our listeners want to get in touch with you, what are some ways they can do that?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me. This has been such a fun conversation. I am on LinkedIn and would encourage anyone to look me up there, send me a connection request. I have that unique name, so I'm easy to find.
Thank you so much, Zabrina.
Thank you.
That brings us to the end of the show. But first, Kayley, what did you learn today?
I really loved her metaphor of creating your own personal board of directors. I think that's a really powerful image, and it helps kind of get multiple voices in the room, even if it's just your own brain, when you're trying to make big decisions or push yourself through challenges or develop. I really appreciate that visual image.
And I like the idea of a cybersecurity professional who is willing to admit that umbrellas don't work, right? Because if big umbrella is pushing umbrella on people, and the default is if I'm living in a rainy place, I'm going to have my umbrella and my coat and my galoshes. But right, when you really focus on it, you are carrying this thing around that is just spreading the water around. It's not really protecting you. Maybe it protects you if you're standing out like at a sentry position, but still, right? It doesn't work. And so there must be a metaphor there that there are likely a lot of products that are being sold for cybersecurity purposes that are not really moving the needle in terms of increasing security. And so I like the idea that she's willing to look at something like that and say, yeah, other people are using this, but you don't need it.
Yeah.
Right?
I agree.
Well, for the entire No Password Required team, I'm Jack Clabby. Thank you for listening. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you for listening to the No Password Required podcast. You can find us on social media at No Password Pod. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to the No Password Required podcast. And if you know someone who might like it, please share it with them. The show is produced by Cyber Florida. And a special thank you goes out to our friends at Carlton Fields. If you'd like to learn more, visit our website, cyberflorida.org/pod. All opinions expressed by the No Password Required podcast participants are their own and do not exclusively represent the views and opinions of Cyber Florida.